A very good afternoon to you and welcome to the latest in our series of live webinars brought to you by the HOP platform. So HOP stands for the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a website and a resource that we hope every school and young person in Hertfordshire is aware of. It contains a host of information for you that will help you making your future career decisions and potentially for seeking jobs and courses that you might want to go on as well. The purpose of these webinars is to give you the opportunity to hear directly from an expert and a professional from a particular field, which today is the incredibly noble role of a social worker. We have got, well, as you can see at the moment, we've got one panelist with you. I'm expecting a second one to be joining us very shortly, so hopefully they will join us very soon. So a very, very good afternoon, and thank you to joining us to Jamie. Jamie, thanks ever so much for giving up your time to tell us about your own experiences about being a social worker. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your career. Do you just want to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, no problems at all. Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Stone. I'm a social worker currently working with Hertfordshire County Council. My current post is a deputy team manager working within the Hertfordshire Community Rapid Response Team. I work currently on something called the Early Intervention Vehicle that looks after people who require sort of 2-hour urgent response. Have quite a sort of wealth of experience across different areas of adult social work. So I've been qualified now for 11 years, and I've worked in several different settings, including a hospital team, safeguarding adult service, community learning disability teams, and also had a brief period working within the voluntary sector with the local Mind. So I'm also a approved mental health professional by background, and that's something I can sort of explain a little bit more later in the session.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's a very, very rich set of experiences that you've got there across various different branches of social work. So we will definitely delve into that. And I said we were going to have a second panelist. Our second panelist is here. So we're delighted to welcome Nana to us this afternoon. Nana, you're taking yourself off mute. Yeah, you know how to do that. So if you could just introduce yourself to our audience to start with, and then we will go into the webinar in full.
Will do. Nice to see you again, Jamie, man. It's been a long time, you know. Nice to see you, man.
Very much so.
So my name is Nana. I'm a social worker of 10 years.
Brilliant. Do you know, the pair of you, you don't look old enough to have that amount of experience and knowledge. So look, we're going to utilize all that knowledge and experience that you got. For those of you that are watching this session live, you can ask your own questions to Jamie and to Nana, and the way that you do that, you haven't got to say anything. We don't need to see you. All you need to do on the questions tab on your dashboard, if you click on that, it opens out a little text box. In the text box, you can type in your question. That will only be visible to me, and then I will pass that question on. So anything that you want a bit more clarification on, anything we're talking about, any other questions that you've got, please do get them in. It's a really, really good opportunity to have this two-way interaction. Just final bit of housekeeping from me. This webinar is being recorded, so if you're watching us live, so it's Thursday afternoon at the moment, we'll run till probably about 5:30 today. It will be recorded. If you can't stay until the end of it, you will be able to watch it back tomorrow on the HOP platform, so the HOP YouTube site, which I will share with you before we go. It's been at the front of the webinar as well. And do tell family and friends about it. We've recorded nearly 100 of these webinars now, covering a different topic and a different career every week. Just this time last week, I was talking to an air traffic control supervisor from Stansted Airport. So we've got a really eclectic mix of different careers that we are covering. So again, do tell your family and friends about HOP. Make sure you're using it. Right then, so on to the topic of social worker. Then, well, Jamie, let me come to you first, but Nana, I'm sure you'll be able to answer this one. And look, my question for you is, between the two of you, you've named a variety of different types of social worker roles. So could you just try and explain what the different branches of social work are and the different sorts of people that you might be working with?
Yeah, no problem. Happy to make a start with that. So I guess one of the joys of social work is that it is such a broad field, and it can bring you into so many different avenues and career opportunities. So obviously, I think when people hear about the job social worker, there's a tendency to associate that with child protection. We all know some of the sort of probably more stereotype things that pop up within the media around sort of children who might need to, who go into care, or looking at children who may be at risk of abuse or harm. However, there's so many different fields that you can choose to specialize in, and I think what's really nice about social work, it's a generic qualification, and what tends to happen is once you go to university and you have some placement experiences, you're encouraged to sort of try two quite different fields, and it gives you an opportunity to sort of try something that you might not initially have gravitated towards. So even within the scope of adults, it's difficult to know where to begin. So, as I sort of touched upon in my own journey, so, I've worked in, as I said, hospital services. So you often hear about some of the pressures in hospitals and trying to support people to be discharged in a timely fashion and how that works. You will see social workers working within local authorities who are sort of supporting either older adults or adults with learning disabilities or physical disabilities who might need care and support to help keep them independent. Obviously, there's a duty set upon local authorities around safeguarding adults. So that brings us into contact with lots of people within sort of across sort of mental health trusts. You will see social workers working within different settings where that might be part of a community mental health team, maybe a crisis team. You'll see social workers working within sort of child and adolescent mental health services. And then you begin to get sort of more and more niche roles where you'll see social workers based within sort of addiction centres. You'll see social workers based within working in within Hertfordshire. We've got some specific posts emerging around working with refugees or people who may not have any recourse to public funds, specialist homeless teams. I could go on and on and on, but it just gives you a little bit of a breadth. And obviously that's just sort of touching upon the work that we do within the sort of local authority or public sector bodies. Social worker, it's a role that's often associated with the local authority, and is a protected title in that sense. But I can give examples of colleagues I know who, I only met someone yesterday who worked for 2 years with the Ministry of Defence. She was a qualified social worker by background, and no, her job title wasn't specifically social worker. She was employed because that was her professional background, and she worked in Cyprus for 2 years at the air base out there, supporting service personnel and their families with different things. And we even had a lady who was a social worker with the FA looking at some of their child protection settings. But that gives a sort of a broad brush of sort of the adult service side of things. And obviously, the skills that you obtain from training can take you into sort of many other type settings, be that sort of the voluntary sector, housing organisations, direct care and support. I'll hand over to sort of Nana now, who can sort of give a similar brief about sort of the breadth of services within children's.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So in terms of children's, there's so many different social work teams for children's, and you've got the referral and assessment, which is where at the beginning, cases come in for referrals, and the job role is to actually complete assessments. You have the child protection and child in need teams that deal with just generally child protection and child in need cases, and you've got court teams that do court work, and you've got looked after children's teams as well, and you've got different kind of social work roles. So you've got PAs who are personal advisors, you've got business support officers who work in children's services, you've got social workers who work in fostering, social workers who work in children with disabilities, and you also have social workers who work in the youth offending service as well. So there's a lot of different roles within the local authorities, and different local authorities across the UK. So where I am based in South London, work differently. I can put comparison to local authorities, maybe north side of the river. So there's lots of roles for children. You've also got practice educators. So if you are a social worker who wants to just focus on supporting students, you've got practice educators, you've got consultant social workers, you've got social workers named principal social workers who deal with learning and development. So there's a wide range of social work jobs within children's services from the beginning all the way through to the end. And it just depends on what part of practice you want to go into, or where do you think your strengths are.
For sure. Okay, well, Nana, let's start with you. What made you want to go into social work? I mean, talk us through when you were perhaps the age of some of our audience at the moment, maybe 15, 16 years old. Was social work always something that you aspired to?
Yeah, it was. I mean, in my first local authority, I worked as a young person advocate, working with young people. So this is when I was about 16. So then it was my avenue kind of to go into social work. I mean, I've got kind of like a social background. I mean, my siblings are also social workers as well. They're more like the beginning of their journey, but I kind of always to work with like young people. So that was kind of like my avenue really to want to become a social worker. And over the past 10 years, I've kind of seen how social work has really kind of changed. As a practice, and also it's kind of good to kind of see a lot more younger people coming into social work, particularly for children, because particularly being a children's social worker, there's a lot of stigma attached. But yeah, I'm just very, very driven. I've also wanted to kind of make changes within the profession, particularly in the areas of leadership. I mean, right now I'm in management. So it's kind of like my kind of goal really is to kind of break into that senior management realm and hopefully just kind of change the way in which we practice.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to come back. You said lots of really interesting things that I want to come back to, but let me just bring Jamie back in. And Jamie, I'm interested to know the origin for you of having that aspiration to go and work in social work yourself.
Yeah, no problem. So, to be honest, guys, I sort of fell into social work a little bit by accident. So, probably when I was sort of 15, 16, I probably was in a little bit of an educational rut. And I would say that my journey was quite different. I became quite disengaged from education, tended not to go to school in the end. And it took me a few years of sort of working in different roles before I fell into doing care work. So I was working with sort of older people doing direct care and support, which is something I probably always had an interest in, but just thinking about sort of who I was at the time and my sort of general male bravado as a 16-year-old, it was something that I think wasn't necessarily expected of me. So, even though it was something that was always interested into me, it's something I sort of fell into. And I just really enjoyed working with people and the opportunities that they bring. And, it sounds all very I can't think of the word now, but it'll come to me, noble. But I just found myself much more interested in being able to sort of make a difference to people's lives. That was sort of coming into than I ever was in being able to face up the freezer section in the shop, which I was sort of doing at the time. That led me to sort of begin to sort of try and re-engage in education. I ended up going. I was quite young on the Access to Higher Education program, but ended up going via the Access to Higher Education training program. And it took me a sort of few years to get there. I had to do it part time, and then I had to have a year out to clear some sort of financial commitments that I had, and I sort of found myself. Doing it. I was always quite. I mean, as I said, I think what was really interesting for me is what I thought social work would be, sort of really at the start. I had a very sort of local authority mindset from that sort of care experience. It was all around care packages and budgets and approval. And I think what really I began to like as we sort of got into university, that social worker was much broader than that. Local authorities don't have, those statutory duties are sort of really important. It was the learning and ability to sort of think about people, systems, how people interact with one another, how people and systems, culture, are sort of enmeshed really. And ever since then, I've sort of been hooked really. That's sort of my journey really. So I was a slight latecomer to it, not as late as many people who get onto the course, but a bit later than sort of took me a couple of years to find myself and work out exactly what it was I wanted to do.
For sure. Okay. Yeah. No, I understand. Nana, let me ask you this question. Now, I know you're obviously in a management position at the moment, so you maybe don't have the sort of day-to-day that someone would have if they were just coming into the role. But thinking about maybe in your first couple of years in role, what would the average day look like for you? So, what time do you start in the morning? Are you going into the office? Are you going out and doing site visits? What does sort of an average day look like, if such thing exists?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, because I did child protection for out of 10 years, I've done it for 9 years straight. So in the very beginning, when I worked in localities, I mean, you know, that was about kind of like getting to the office very, very early. And my team, being a locality social worker, you did everything. You did child protection, child need such and core, so, and duty. So you was very, very busy. You might have maybe 3 to 4 visits a week. Working very much late hours. I think in the beginning, during my newly qualified year, I mean, I had about 3 or 4 cases that were in court, but it was a very, very busy service. Child protection by nature is very, very busy.
Cool.
So yeah, it'd be full of meetings. You'd have your duty week, you would be coming home very, very late. And I've had a lot of kind of like high risk cases as well. I think cases that I'll never forget where I've gone to get young people from trap houses. I remember one young person, it was a Friday on duty, and the referral came in at about 10 to 5. But it was a young person that I'd worked with, and the police just sent a referral, said to us he's in a trap house. And because of the young person that I worked with before, the referral came straight back to me. So I remember getting on a train. I went to London Euston Station, and I got to where I got to maybe 8, 9 o'clock. Then I went to the trap house at 10 o'clock in the evening with the police. They brought the young person back the following day on a Saturday. So it's a lot of work. So it's very, very busy. It's not for the faint-hearted, but you get a lot of experience from here, a lot of experience. But yeah, very busy working in child protection.
Yeah. Okay. And then Jamie, can you again just take yourself back a few years to where you were in more of an entry level position? What does an average day look like for you? Bearing in mind you work with slightly different client group from Nana, so I'm just keen for you to paint the picture really of the different varieties of social work.
No, absolutely. So when I first made my start as a newly qualified, I was working in one of Hertfordshire's learning disability teams at the time. So, which I just think is a much more interested in the social work area of social work than it's often given credit for. I think the sort of broad brush of learning disability was huge in terms of whether you're working with someone who's maybe has a mild learning disability, or maybe who and actually functions quite independently most of the time, or you might be working with someone who's got severe, profound and multiple learning disabilities, who sort of requires intensive care sort of 24 hours a day. And then we sort of had every spectrum between. So, we'd be working with people who are maybe subject to maybe in hospital under part of the Mental Health Act, dealing with people with complex health needs who might be in and out of the sort of general hospital. We would maybe deal with people who had some interface with the criminal justice system, so they might be subject to sort of ongoing restrictions, having been discharged from part of the Mental Health Act, or they might be subject to sort of multi-agency public protection. I would say from an adult perspective, what's quite unique is obviously we have to work sort of, we work, not that obviously you don't work in part with partners in children's services, but we are only sort of one part of that broader health and social care puzzle. So, often we're working very closely within a wider care provider market. So we're looking at our sort of relationships with direct care providers, health teams, sometimes across different teams within the local authority that can be quite wonderful at times, because you get to meet lots of different professionals and people with different experiences, but certainly not without its challenges. Everyone sort of brings different experiences. So like in children's services, you might have different meetings. You might be required to go and undertake a new assessment of need for someone. Obviously, especially working in a long-term disability team, lots of people had clear lifelong needs. So there was obviously an ongoing review process where you would do that often as a touch point, just to make sure everything was still working for that person, or responding where there was a significant change. Obviously, as well as working with individuals, we'd also be working closely, with family carers and friends who provide those sort of informal support. Yeah, it's hard to say really. It could literally depend. There were days I would have back-to-back visits. There's days where I might lock myself in a study because I had a sort of urgent report to get done. I think with my current role as an AMP, improved mental health professional, that's a additional sort of post-qualifying role that you can take on going back to university. So where you're responsible for coordinating assessments under the Mental Health Act for people who might be unwell. So that's something I do in addition to my role. So where that's a sort of statutory function, the expectations of me that twice a month I will sort of step out of my day job and I will go onto the sort of Mental Health Act duty rota. So we'll sort of wait for assessments. We'd have general team duty where I don't think we quite had the consistent level of excitement that you might get in children's services. The mixture of stuff that would come through might be sort of quite mundane to, not dissimilar from Nana. I remember one day getting a call from the police saying, this random person with Down syndrome we've found in Watford High Street. What do we do with them? They don't know their name. They don't know anything. Come to Watford police station. So, I think, the impression really is that sort of wherever you sort of end up, it's the variety of what you do. I think that makes it really a really, really rewarding career. I think if you like difference, and I think you like to meet different people, it's a really, really great job. I mean, I remember laughing once at looking through my caseload, like when I was a year in and thinking, God, blimey, there's such variation. Person A on my caseload couldn't be any more different from person B, and then person C's, way over here. So, and I think that's why social work's a really, really great role where notwithstanding the ability to sort of work with people at some of the worst times of their life, and but also support them to sort of get get through that and overcome that to sort of get to a much better point.
Sure. I mean, you touched on something there that I was going to ask. So, Jamie, let me ask you that question first. How much of the role of a social worker is proactive, and how much of it is, like the instances that you've given there and Nana's given, has to be completely reactive, where you just have to drop everything that you're doing and go and respond to a situation?
Oh, I mean, it can vary team by team, to be honest with you. So I know within the current sort of area that I'm working at the minute, we work in a very reactive team because I work in urgent community response, which is about 2-hour responses to prevent unnecessary admissions to hospital. I'd say you get a bit more variety in casework. You tend, when you're sort of in a more traditional local authority post and you're sort of holding a caseload, that's the challenge and the curse, I guess I can say, because obviously you're still having to work through sort of your more routine tasks, your reviews. Obviously, there's still sort of a statutory duty upon the team. So managers and senior managers need to sort of ensure that people are responding and work's getting done. But you also have to respond to risk. People live complex lives, and I've had cases that I thought said, I'll pick that up as give that to me. I'll do a quick favour and review, and we'll get that wrapped up. And it's ended up being social work, the movie. And then I've rushed out to things where I thought, oh my goodness, what am I walking into? And it's sort of been storming the teacup. So the ability, you are sort of constantly having to sort of prioritise and reprioritise. I think it's probably fair to say I would say that I think children's services has a more reactive element to it, maybe more so than a traditional local authorities adults team. But there's still sort of different teams where you might, where that level of, a mental health crisis team, for example, might be very different to sort of a long-term residential review team, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, look, Minana, let me put the same question to you and just sort of add to that question about what are the working hours and shift patterns like? I mean, I'm guessing that Friday night that you told us about where you got called by the police because one of your young people needed some sort of urgent support. Were you on duty at that point, or can you, particularly in children's services, never switch off?
Yeah, I was on duty, and to be honest with you, Gareth, the working life of a social worker, I'd say, in children's services, although they say it's 36 hours working week, is not. It's not. You're working probably 40, 50 to 50 plus hours, and that's the reality of the job role. It's a very, very demanding and tough role, particularly with, just the complexity of cases. And I think COVID coming in has really kind of obviously changed the landscape of social work. So there's a lot of work, and Jamie's right. Depending on where you are, is very, very reactive. If you're in a child protection team or referral assessment team, you're responding to referrals, and when you're on duty weeks, you're having to rush out, go in, do the work, assess. It is. So it takes a lot of time management, being very boundaried, and also being very clear with your assessment skills and the work you are going to be completing with families. So yeah, it is tough. I mean, I wouldn't lie to you and say that I haven't gone through burnout. I've gone through burnout, but I think now being in management, obviously I'm no longer on the ground, but bearing in mind I was on the ground for 7-8 years straight. But even when as a deputy, so even as a team manager, if there's staffing issues, I do go out on the ground, I do go and do visits. So although I'm still here, not on the ground, I still go out and support the team where I need to.
Yeah, I see. Okay. I mean, now let me talk about children services again. But typically, why would a young person be referred to you or to the local authority? What might be the range of sort of complexities or needs that's required a social worker to be involved?
It could be anything. I mean, anybody can make a referral to children's services. It can be a member of the public, it can be in school, health, the police. We get referrals from schools all the time. Schools have concerns about children regarding their attendance, maybe a child major disclosure. There might be concerns to do with domestic abuse, substance misuse. It could be anything and everything. In terms of our referral, it's just more around how we respond. And cases tend to kind of evolve and change all the time, but it could be anything and everything. And I think that's part of the reason why I do the platform on the podcast, and really trying to explain to people the job of a social worker. I think people just think we can just come in and just take children away, and actually you can't. There's a process. You have to start from the bottom up. You have to go through assessment. You've got to go through child in need, child protection. There's so many layers to it. But yeah, referrals will come in for so many different reasons.
Sure. Okay. Well, do get your questions in. If there's anything that you want us to go into a bit more detail about, or you want some clarification on, then do. I suspect the next set of questions are going to be the ones that will be of most relevance and interest for you watching at the moment. So, Jamie, let me ask you this question. If you were 15 right now, or you were talking to a 15-year-old and they were saying, I really want to go into social work, but I don't know what courses or subjects I should do, what do you recommend? Oh, Jamie, we can't hear you. I don't know what that is.
Sorry about that.
Yes, there we go.
So I'd say if you're looking at sort of options from a sort of more traditional sort of GCSE A-level type route, I think subjects where you get to have a bit of grounding in social science can be really, really helpful. Obviously, you'll have subjects like sort of psychology or sociology that begin to sort of look at and explore elements of human behaviour. How society works and how society sort of interacts with one. I would say, generally speaking, it's quite social work is quite a sort of broad strength. So I think there's lots and lots of different skills to it. So I'm sort of speaking there about understanding people within either as individuals or environments. Lots and lots of there's lots of other skills where I think you can draw upon from subjects. I think something like history can be quite useful for social work. The ability to sort of analyse and look at source is, or something like geography, even where like you're able to sort of, which sort of looks at sort of the world and how different bits interact with one another. I know we usually think about geography as like, what flag is this, but that also begins to can look at how humans and systems and how they interact with one another. English is always a good subject. There's lots and lots of writing within social work. Like Nana said, court work can be quite a significant part of children's work. It's something that's also quite prevalent in adult work. If you're having to be involved in a court of protection proceedings, or representing yourself at a mental health tribunal, and also just simply writing reports about people's lives, what we write matters. And probably less so with adults, but certainly people, children in care. Many guys go back to look at their records to understand their journeys, and actually sometimes how you write and what you write, that can really impact on someone. There's some. I remember having a session with someone with lived experience of care, and him sort of telling his journey once, and sort of really making me stop and think about actually how what I write matters. People can request access to their records. I guess those sort of from a sort of more traditionalist route. Social work is quite a broad church as well. I think we get lots of people who have maybe gone a more vocational route, so they might have picked up a sort of health and social care qualification, health and social care course at a BTEC level via local colleges. Obviously, they're subjects that look at sort of across health and social care. Yeah. A few different avenues there. What I quite like at the moment as well is also beginning to broaden up more and more pathways. We're sort of with the onset sort of degree apprenticeships as well, and Nana touched on briefly some of the sort of fast track and step up programs. There's becoming more and more different routes now, and I think that's only a positive, because not everyone's able to do a traditional. I mean, I struggled. I had to work all the way through my university course to support my mum, so it can be quite difficult, that traditional route. But I think it's brilliant. So what we're seeing in Hertfordshire now is we're seeing guys who have maybe not gone down the traditional academic route, maybe sort of working with some of our supported living and in-house supported living and day services, coming through onto sort of different apprenticeship programs. And and those guys bring such a sort of a breadth of experience, and it's really nice that they have sort of additional career pathways that they can sort of pick up, really.
Yeah, of course. So look, what you described there is that social work needs people from all sorts of backgrounds and knowledge bases, and there's lots of different skills that you can pick up from a whole variety of different school subjects. Nana, let me bring on to you. I mean, obviously the pair of you went to university together, so I'm sure you would advocate the courses that universities can offer. But do you have to go to university, or are there other good pathways that people can take?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more traditional way is to go to university. I mean, if you've done a bachelor's in something else, then obviously you can do your master's in social work. But as Jamie said, you've got the step up program, you've got the frontline programs. So those programs are very much more condensed. So me and Jamie did the 3-year bachelor's, but the new kind of courses are more condensed, where you can qualify quicker. Within 18 months or so, so most of them are done via unis, or you can do open university. So there's various courses. Obviously, you've just got to make sure which one is more suitable to you in terms of your life and your current circumstances.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So that's a little bit about the qualifications that people can take, and so there's a variety. And as you mentioned there about degree apprenticeships as well, which are which are fantastic. But for getting the qualifications, I'm quite interested just to learn about the sort of skills and personal qualities that social workers have. So, I mean, Nana, it sounds like an obvious thing, but having an interest and being able to relate to people surely is a very, very important quality for social workers to have.
Yeah, it is. And I think also, Gareth, is about making sure that you are also relatable, but also you're transparent. one of the things that commonly happens is that families don't feel that social workers are always open with them. So I think it's important that you're very much open with families about the process. Also kind of obviously showing empathy as well, being able to show understanding, but also as well kind of like being personable, and also being aware of power dynamics. You know, you're a social worker, whether it's adults or children, you're working in a very powerful position. You work for an authority, and obviously you've got to be aware how that can put people off. So kind of showing that kind of side to you, that you understand their circumstances in terms of what's going on, but actually you're also there to kind of support. Particularly for me being a children's social worker, you know, going into a family's life straight away, the question you get asked, "You're gonna go take my child away?" And it's like, no. So it's kind of starting from the bottom, you know, and saying that, you know, I'm here to respond to the referral. This is my processes, but I want to work towards closing your case. Do you know what I mean? So I think definitely be personable. And you know, I work where I work. You know, I work with a lot of a lot of young people. So also sometimes not being too corporate. So while I work south of the river, yeah, young people always go and say that they don't think that they can have, they don't think they're able to identify with their social worker. So being definitely identifiable to your demographic of people that you're working with, and that also helps.
Yeah. No, okay, no, that all makes sense. Jamie, what about you? I mean, you spoke about the fact that people might have big caseloads, so you clearly got to be well organised, haven't you, to be a social worker? Are there any other skills or qualities that you think it's worth referencing?
I think the ability to sort of remain open-minded and I just think sort of sometimes respect people, and because that sort of if anyone sort of chooses to go into social work, much of sort of the academic field looks at elements of power dynamics, how different communities and individuals might experience different challenges and oppression, how sort of discrimination operates, not just at sort of an individual level, but how sort of cultural norms, societies and expectations can sort of enhance or sort of cause problems outside of your sort of normal, sort of own set of experiences is really important. I think the ability to think on your feet can be really important. Circumstances change and develop all the time. So I think it's really, you have to have that ability to respond and think on your feet and reprioritize. I would say being organized really helps, but I'm incredibly unorganized by nature. So it's slightly paradoxical there. I guess I possibly overcompensate for that by, getting caught up doing a little bit extra, or, my wife telling me off. And I think the ability to sort of be open and reflect, really. So, when you talk about sort of relationship with management or, colleagues and peers, reflection is a really key thing that we look at in social work, because all of those dynamics that I've just spoken about aren't necessarily at the forefront. Some of them are subconscious, some of those are deeply ingrained, some of them we might not even be aware of how we respond. And like Nan said, you're often going to people's lives in really difficult circumstances. So Nana's experience is probably your more traditional social worker one, like he knocks on the door or makes contact and someone says, "Oh my God, you're going to take my children away." But, to give sort of our adult context, we get a referral for a couple maybe who have been married for sort of 60 years and their GP says they're not coping, and they knock on the door and say, "Who the hell are you to interfere?" Or say, "I'm not looking after my husband or wife," or appropriately. So that sort of ability to relate, have difficult conversations, and I think just be transparent and honest. I think there's a real skill in being able to sort of be open and honest with people about concerns, risks, challenges, but still be empathetic and sort of I call it like the ability to put a figurative arm around someone and say, yes, circumstances aren't such, but actually we do want to work with and support individuals where we can.
Yeah, no, okay. We seem to have lost Nana for a moment, so I think you'd have to do a bit of the heavy lifting, Jamie, for the next few minutes or so. But really what I wanted to come on to is there going to be demand? So if people are watching this at the moment thinking that social work is something they want to go into, is there going to be a demand for social workers? Do we need more of them at the moment? Is it a good industry to go into to set yourself up for a career?
Absolutely, the demand for social workers is absolutely huge at the moment. Whatever field you're in, be that children's, adults, mental health, substance misuse, there simply aren't enough social workers at this point to fill demand. So, in terms of sort of career opportunities, I mean, Nana and I spoke about sort of breadth of opportunities that are available for people, but just in terms of, it's a completely different landscape from I think Nana and I probably just missed the really difficult period when it was really, really difficult to get a job in social work. But I would say, you talk, from my side, they talk about sort of the aging population, increase in mental health challenges, stuff like how long NHS wait lists and the fallout from the COVID pandemic, whether you're sort of an older, a working age adult, older adult, or a young person, all of that has consequences. So yeah, I would say in terms of sort of career opportunities, absolutely vast. We are crying out for social workers and good and people to come into the profession.
Yeah, and are there any particular branches of social work where there's going to be more need than others?
I would say they're probably difficult to speak for children's services. I can only go on sort of the Hertfordshire context as well, but I would say generally across the across across the spectrum, that sort of we are crying out for social workers, basically, Gareth. I would say,
Yeah.
once upon local authorities are sort of more so than ever sort of proactively reaching into universities to sort of try and engage people. Demand on services certainly is outstripping supply, and it's difficult to see how that's going to change. I think it's been really positive, as I think that's been the driver in the sort of broadening of the entry points for social work. So in terms of sort of opportunities, now is a better time. I mean, Nana will be able to give a bit more, but just saying about opportunities for sort of social workers, Nana, sort of you could say more about children's services, but certainly my experience in adults is where sort of crying out for more and more people to enter the profession.
I agree, Jamie. We do. I mean, sorry, I have some connections issues, but yeah, we do need more social workers to come in to the profession. We do, because there's obviously a big turnover, and it's impacted upon the social workers who are there within the profession, really. So I would urge, if you're thinking about coming to social work, do join. I know there's a lot of scrutiny in the job role that we do, but we do need a lot of social workers to come in, and just kind of provide good practice, really.
Yeah, no, okay. So look, this is clearly a career where there's lots of demand and there's going to be lots of opportunities for people coming through the system and coming off the conveyor belt. I've got one question here, and I guess you both kind of touched on it, but it's a question that I think probably lots of social workers are faced with, which is, what do you do if you're dealing with, this one says with a young person, but I guess this could be an adult, it could be anyone who just says they don't want to talk to you. And I'm sure you must, I mean, I've got a teenage stepson, and trying to get information out of him sometimes is hard work. But I guess particularly when you're working with vulnerable young people, I mean, Nana, how often does that happen where you've got that first meeting with that young person and they just don't want to open up, or they just don't think they want the support at all?
It happens a lot. I mean, with me, to be honest with you, I'm quite fortunate that when I've gone to work with young people, they've actually liked my approach and my style, with how I've worked with them. But the way in which I practice, I tend to not practice in a corporate way. So it's being my avenue in. But I know for other social workers, it's different. And I think my kind of thing is bring yourself down to the level of that young person as well. Not always any corporate jargon, but just kind of just be relatable to them. That's the way to break through those barriers.
Sure, and I guess that's just something that you learn over time, isn't it? That you have those experiences and you reflect on what's worked and perhaps what hasn't worked. Jamie, what about you when you're dealing with, I'm going to say clients, it might not be the right word, or service users, but people who perhaps are a bit reluctant and resistant to your support in the first instance?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly experience a lot of the time. I mean, one of the huge emerging fields in sort of adults and mental health practice is around self-neglect, and you get to see, it's an incredibly challenging field, and that can sort of take many forms, be that sort of someone who might, be having significant hoarding challenges, or just doesn't sort of engage or sort of take sort of care of their health or their wider welfare, or we even see it with people, some of our sort of maybe street homeless populations, where people are just so entrenched in those sort of cycles of addiction, or that it just makes it impossible. I mean, the slightly different context, I guess, for adults is that, one of the things that we have to bear in mind from an adult perspective is individual rights to, adults are adults, and we all have the right to self-determine and make our own decisions. But obviously, and I don't think this is something that we always get right within adult services. We still have to sort of be aware of risks, and sometimes where people have the ability to maybe their sort of understanding of a situation might be impaired through, a mental disorder like, dementia, or, a more traditional mental health problem, or if that's heightened because it's in crisis, really. I mean, I can give examples where I remember sitting on someone's doorstep talking to them through their letterbox for about 30 minutes. And I think Nana's point around sort of, I guess authenticity is really, really important, is a phrase that I would use. It's really important to be authentic with people, and I think recognise that you're not always coming in as sort of an expert in their experiences, and I think the ability to sort of be open and talk to people. Sometimes it can take we work with some people for sort of 2 years plus, to try and build relationships, and where we've sort of started off talking through the letterbox and we've managed to sort of build down bridges. I think sometimes persistence can be key. I think
Yeah, no, I can see that persistence and perseverance clearly is a very important quality.
Actually hearing what the person's saying to you. So what's important in life might not be necessarily a concern to that person. So we've got to sometimes be able to sort of manage and mitigate those different demands. So our classic one is usually our district nursing colleagues. We've got, you need to do something to this person, and it's a bit like, this person is more than their diabetes,
Yeah.
Look at them holistically and sort of try and understand where it is. I'll be honest with you, certainly from an adult care's perspective, the demand and sort of throughput and expectations is really hard. But but the key factor is always sort of keeping a handle on risk, and sometimes trusting your judgment as well, where that's something that develops with experience. So I've had to push back. There's been occasions I've really had to push back on my managers where they've said, no, close the case, they're not engaging, and I've had to push back and sometimes say, no, we need to persevere, we need to know what we're doing, and there are some times where actually the person doesn't want to engage, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just not the right time, and sometimes what we then have to do is respond when that time is right. You can't always save everyone, if that, which sounds a horrifically sort of dismissive phrase, but I hope the sort of context is understood.
Yeah, no, I understand. Look, we're having connection issues, I think, both with Nana and your one has sort of dropped in and out as well, Jamie. So look, let's round it up here. I'm just going to leave on screen for you all, just hopefully it's a bit further reading. So on the left-hand side, the 4 further education colleges in Hertfordshire all offer health and or social care related courses. So if your school doesn't offer them and it's an area you really want to go into, it's not essential, as Jamie explained earlier. There are lots of different subjects and pathways in, but you may just want to go and explore what courses your local college offers. On the right hand side, you've got a QR code there that will take you to the, I assume that's the British Association of Social Workers, which is a probably your institute, Jamie. Now, I know on their website, and the QR code will take you through it, there's a really good careers section on there. So if you go into that, it will give you lots of hints and tips and guidance, and I think there's videos and case studies there that will help explain the role of a social worker further. And then Nana's not on the call with us at the moment, so he can't plug his own podcast, which is available through, I think, Spotify, and also definitely on YouTube as well. But do have a look. For that. I've watched it very briefly in preparation, but as I'm sure you picked up, Nana is clearly very, very enthusiastic to add to all the experience and knowledge that he's got. So do have a look on there. There's a lot of videos that he's created. So that's the Social Worker and the Mentor podcast, which is available on YouTube. So do take a look at that. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today and for giving up your time and for sharing all those rich experiences that you've got. I found it incredibly informative and really inspiring as well. And I'm sure anyone watching this will really think very, very positively about a future career in social work. Nana, you're back with us very quickly. I'm just going to give you the opportunity to plug your podcast.
Apologies for the network issues. Yeah, so the podcast that I do is called The Social Worker and the Mentor. We are on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Spotify. We've also got another podcast show called The Panel, where we allow professionals to actually come on. So yeah, if you can, check out myself and Robert, the Social Worker and the Mentor. But yeah, our TikTok, we have about 14,000 followers on there. So yeah, you can use it for your CPD, but we're very authentic and we give a lot of live kind of experience in terms of social work and what's going on. So yeah, check us out on our podcast, Social Worker and the Mentor.
Sure. So, but Nana, as I said to Jamie, thank you so much for giving up your time and sharing your thoughts and your ideas with us today. As I said, very, very informative, very inspiring. Now then, for everyone watching with us, we do hope you've enjoyed this webinar. We hope it's given you some insights into the career of a social worker. The HOP channel, which is where you can find all of our videos that we've recorded. So we've recorded nearly 100 of them now. We've covered a whole array of different subject areas. Do have a look at it. Do tell your family, do tell your friends, do tell your teachers to have a look at HOP, have a look at our social media channels as well. And we wish you all the very, very best with your future careers decisions. So guys, thanks so much for joining us today, and have a very good evening.